Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the intelligence reports spread across his crystalline desk. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with worried conversations from dozens of species, each more concerned than the last about the growing territorial disputes in the Outer Rim sectors. War seemed inevitable, yet the humans remained conspicuously silent. The Vorthak Empire had been expanding aggressively for months, claiming uninhabited systems and establishing military outposts dangerously close to established trade routes. Their insectoid warriors were renowned throughout the galaxy for their ruthless efficiency and hive-mind coordination. Meanwhile, the Crystalline Confederation had begun mobilizing their geometric fleets, their silicon-based commanders calculating probability matrices for various conflict scenarios. What puzzled Zethkar most was humanity's response, or rather, their lack of one. Earth's representative, Ambassador Sarah Chen, sat quietly in the corner of the council chamber, occasionally taking notes but never contributing to the heated discussions about military preparations and alliance formations. Her calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the barely contained panic rippling through the other delegates. "Ambassador Chen," Zethkar finally called out, his translator rendering his chittering speech into standard galactic. "Your species has remained remarkably quiet during these proceedings. Do humans not understand the gravity of the situation?" Sarah looked up from her tablet, offering a slight smile that somehow made Zethkar's exoskeleton tingle with unease. "Oh, we understand perfectly, Ambassador. We're simply observing." The Keltheran delegate, a massive creature whose rocky hide constantly shifted between different mineral compositions, rumbled his disagreement. "Observing? The Vorthak have claimed 7 systems in the past month. The Confederation threatens to unleash their quantum disruptors if expansion continues. This is no time for passive observation." "Perhaps," Sarah replied, standing gracefully. "But humans have learned that sometimes the best way to win a war is to avoid fighting it altogether." This statement sent a wave of confused murmurs through the assembly. The concept seemed absurd to most species present. The Draknari, whose entire culture revolved around honor through combat, actually laughed, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through the chamber. "Humans are known for their military prowess," General Thrix of the Draknari stated, his scarred face displaying genuine confusion. "Your species fought valiantly alongside us during the Plague Wars. Your tactical innovation saved countless worlds. Why would you abandon such strength now?" Sarah's expression remained neutral, but Zethkar noticed something flicker in her eyes, a depth that hadn't been there before. "Who said anything about abandoning strength, General? Sometimes the greatest strength lies in restraint." The Aquatic Collective's representative, speaking through a sophisticated water-filled communication device, bubbled their concern. "The mathematical models are clear. If current territorial expansion continues at this rate, the Vorthak will control 43% of the Outer Rim within 2 standard years." "Economic projections indicate—" "We've seen your projections," Sarah interrupted gently. "They're quite thorough, but they're based on the assumption that expansion will continue unopposed." "Are you suggesting the humans will intervene?" Zethkar asked, though something in the human's tone suggested the answer wasn't so simple. Sarah Chen gathered her materials slowly, deliberately. "We're suggesting that there are forces at work here that your projections haven't accounted for. The Vorthak expansion isn't random, nor is it purely opportunistic. There's a pattern, a purpose that goes beyond simple territorial acquisition." The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chattering Pixilian delegates, no larger than house cats but possessing intellects that rivaled quantum computers, stopped their rapid-fire discussions to listen. "What kind of pattern?" the crystalline representative asked, their voice resonating like struck crystal. "The kind that suggests someone or something is orchestrating events to push us toward a specific type of conflict," Sarah replied. "Tell me, Ambassador Zethkar, have you noticed how perfectly positioned each Vorthak expansion has been to threaten exactly the right species at exactly the right time to create maximum tension?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked more rapidly as he considered this. The human was right. Each new Vorthak outpost seemed strategically placed to create the greatest possible diplomatic friction. It was almost as if— "You think this is deliberate manipulation," he said, not quite believing the words as they left his translator. "I think," Sarah said, moving toward the chamber's exit, "that humans learned long ago to recognize when they're being played. And we've learned that the best response to manipulation isn't always direct confrontation. Then what is it? General Thrix demanded, his warrior's instincts clearly frustrated by the human's cryptic responses. Sarah paused at the doorway, her hand resting on the frame. Patience, General, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the most decisive action is inaction. The Vorthak aren't the real threat here. They're a symptom of something much larger. What could be larger than a potential galactic war? The aquatic collective representative gurgled. Sarah's smile returned, but this time it carried an edge that made even the massive Keltharan delegate shift uncomfortably. The kind of threat that wants us to focus on each other instead of looking for the puppet master pulling the strings. Humans avoid war not because we fear it, but because we understand that the greatest victories often come from fighting the right enemy. With that, she left the chamber, leaving behind a room full of delegates who suddenly found their certainties about the unfolding crisis significantly shaken. Zethkar stared at the door long after it had closed, a growing suspicion forming in his mind that humanity's absence from the war preparations wasn't weakness, it was strategy of a sophistication that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to comprehend. The next few hours would prove whether the humans were dangerously naive or operating on a level of strategic thinking that the other species had yet to grasp. Either way, Zethkar realized that their assumptions about human motivations might need serious revision. 3 days after the council meeting, Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the observation deck of the human research vessel Curiosity, watching the Vorthak fleet movements through advanced scanning equipment that officially didn't exist. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, tracking patterns that would have been invisible to most galactic military analysts. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Torres called from his station, "we're picking up some interesting chatter from the Vorthak command frequencies." Elena didn't look away from her displays. "Define interesting, Lieutenant. They're not using standard Vorthak military protocols. The command structure appears different, almost like they're receiving orders from an external source." This caught Elena's attention. She moved to Torres's station, studying the communication patterns he'd isolated. The Vorthak were indeed a hive-mind species, but their military communications typically followed predictable hierarchical patterns based on proximity to their queen commanders. What she was seeing here looked more like remote control. "Have you cross-referenced these patterns with our xenocommunication database?" she asked. "Already done, Commander. The transmission architecture matches no known Vorthak communication method, but there are similarities to something else." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Show me." Torres brought up a comparison analysis. The Vorthak communications were being overlaid with another pattern, one that made Elena's blood run cold. The underlying structure was distinctly familiar, though she hadn't seen it in over a decade. "The Harbinger signals," she whispered. "Ma'am?" Elena straightened, her mind racing through implications. The Harbinger signals had been detected briefly during humanity's first expansion into deep space, before they'd made contact with the Galactic Council. Strange transmissions from the void between galaxies that had appeared to be testing responses, probing for reactions. They'd stopped as suddenly as they'd started, leading most human scientists to dismiss them as natural phenomena. "Lieutenant, I need you to run a deep analysis on these patterns. Look for any mathematical signatures that match the Harbinger database, and do it quietly." "Aye, Commander." Elena returned to her station, pulling up classified files that required her biometric authorization to access. The Harbinger signals had been more than just random transmissions. Earth's xenopsychology teams had theorized they represented some form of intelligence gathering, a vast, patient entity learning about the species it encountered by watching how they reacted to stimuli. If the Vorthak were being influenced by the same source that had generated the Harbinger signals, then Ambassador Chen had been absolutely right. This wasn't about territorial expansion. It was about manipulation on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy had previously imagined. "Commander?" Torres called, his voice tight with concern. "You need to see this." Elena moved back to his station, where he'd isolated a specific frequency buried deep within the Vorthak transmissions. The mathematical signature was unmistakable. It matched the Harbinger database with 97% accuracy. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "Based on the transmission logs I can access, at least 6 months, but the patterns suggest it could have been building for much longer." Elena nodded grimly. 6 months ago, the Vorthak had begun their expansion. 6 months ago, various galactic species had started experiencing increased territorial tensions. And 6 months ago, humanity had quietly begun positioning its research vessels in strategic locations throughout the galaxy, not for military purposes, but for observation. Lieutenant, open a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha clearance. Channel open, Commander. This is Commander Vasquez, authorization code Phoenix 77 Delta. I need to speak with Director Harrison immediately. The transmission delay seemed to stretch forever, though Elena knew it was only seconds. When Director Harrison's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression was grim. Commander, please tell me you have good news. I'm afraid not, sir. We've confirmed the connection. The Vorthak expansion is being orchestrated by signals matching the Harbinger database. We're not looking at a conventional territorial dispute, we're looking at a controlled experiment. Harrison's jaw tightened. Damn, how much does the Council know? Nothing concrete. Ambassador Chen planted the seeds of suspicion, but they're still focused on the symptoms rather than the cause. Most species are mobilizing for war against the Vorthak, which is exactly what our puppet master wants, Harrison said. How many species are we talking about? Elena consulted her data. Current projections suggest that a galactic war would involve at least 14 major species, and twice as many minor ones. The casualties would be measured in the billions. Also, something from beyond our galaxy can study how we fight. Harrison muttered. Commander, what's the status of Operation Looking Glass? Elena smiled for the first time in days. Phase 1 is complete, sir. We've identified the transmission sources and confirmed the manipulation patterns. We're ready to proceed to Phase 2. Excellent. Elena, I want you to understand what we're asking. If we're wrong about this, humanity will be seen as deliberately sabotaging galactic unity during a crisis. We could be expelled from the Council or worse. And if we're right, sir? If we're right, we might be the only thing standing between galactic civilization and whatever intelligence is conducting this experiment. Harrison paused. The decision is yours, Commander. You're the one on the ground. Elena looked around the bridge of the Curiosity. Her crew was small but highly trained, each member handpicked for their ability to think outside conventional parameters. They'd been preparing for this moment for months, though until now the true scope of their mission had been theoretical. Sir, the Vorthak aren't evil. They're victims just like everyone else. If we can prove that, if we can show the galaxy what's really happening, we might prevent a war that would reshape galactic civilization, Harrison finished. The question is whether we can do it without starting a different kind of war in the process. Elena thought about the peaceful Vorthak colonies they'd observed, the ones where the strange signals hadn't penetrated. She thought about the millions of beings across dozens of worlds who were preparing to fight and die for a conflict that had been manufactured by something that viewed them all as laboratory subjects. Director, initiate Phase 2 of Looking Glass. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do when we really want to avoid a war. Understood, Commander. God help us all. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with the weight of what was about to unfold. In the next few hours, humanity would either save galactic civilization or destroy their place within it. But as she looked at the data stream showing the puppet strings attached to an entire species, she knew they had no choice but to try. Dr. Marcus Webb had spent the last 18 hours in the deepest levels of the human research station Prometheus, surrounded by quantum computers that hummed with barely contained energy. His team of xenopsychologists, mathematicians, and communication specialists worked around the clock, decoding the complex manipulation protocols that had been steering galactic events toward war. Doctor, called Dr. Yuki Tanaka from her workstation, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. I think I've found something significant in the behavioral modification patterns. Marcus pushed back from his own terminal, where he'd been mapping the psychological profiles of affected Vorthak commanders. Show me. Yuki's display revealed a three-dimensional model of influence patterns spreading across the galaxy like a virus. The manipulation isn't random. It's specifically designed to exploit each species' particular psychological vulnerabilities. For the Vorthak, it amplifies their natural territorial instincts. For the Crystalline Confederation, it triggers their mathematical paranoia about resource allocation. And for other species? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The Dreknari are being fed subtle signals that frame the conflict in terms of honor and warrior pride. The Aquatic Collective is receiving data suggesting that their economic models are being threatened. Each species is being given reasons to fight that align perfectly with their deepest cultural values. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This level of psychological manipulation required an intimate understanding of galactic civilization that could only come from extensive observation. How long would it take to gather this kind of detailed psychological data on so many species? Dr. James Carter looked up from his cryptographic analysis station. Based on the sophistication of these profiles, decades, maybe centuries, whatever intelligence is behind this has been watching us for a very long time. The implications were staggering. While galactic civilization had been developing, exploring, and expanding, something had been studying them like specimens in a vast laboratory. Every conflict, every alliance, every moment of peace had potentially been observed and catalogued. Dr. Webb, interrupted Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communication station, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Chen. She's requesting an immediate conference." "Put her through," Marcus said. Moving to the central communication array, Ambassador Chen's image materialized in the holographic display, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a figure that made Marcus's breath catch, a Vorthak. But not just any Vorthak. This one's chitinous exoskeleton bore the distinctive markings of a Queen Commander, yet her multifaceted eyes showed something Marcus had never seen in a Vorthak before. Fear. "Dr. Webb," Ambassador Chen said without preamble, "I'd like you to meet Queen Commander Zakth. She's recently become aware that her actions over the past several months haven't entirely been her own." The Vorthak spoke, her words translated by advanced communication algorithms. "Human doctor, my hive experience is something unprecedented. We remember making decisions to expand territory, to claim new worlds, but when we examine these memories closely, they feel external, as if thoughts were placed in our collective consciousness." Marcus exchanged glances with his team. This was the confirmation they'd been hoping for, but hearing it directly from a Vorthak Queen Commander was both validating and terrifying. "Queen Commander," Marcus said carefully, "how did you become aware of this manipulation?" "Human Ambassador showed us something," Zakth replied. "She demonstrated that our expansion pattern was mathematically impossible, given our natural decision-making processes. The probability calculations were too perfect, too artificial." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "Dr. Webb, Queen Commander Zakth has agreed to submit to a detailed neurological analysis. We need to understand exactly how the manipulation works if we're going to counter it." "Ambassador, that's an extraordinary risk," Marcus said. "If word gets out that humans are conducting experiments on a Vorthak Queen Commander, the greater risk is allowing this manipulation to continue," Chen replied. "Queen Commander Zakth has been in contact with other queens through their collective consciousness. The artificial influences are spreading, becoming stronger. If we don't act soon, the Vorthak won't be able to resist the compulsion to attack." Marcus looked at his team, seeing his own grim determination reflected in their faces. "How long do we have?" "Our models suggest that the manipulation signals are building towards some kind of crescendo," Dr. Tanaka said, checking her latest analysis. "Based on the pattern progression, I estimate we have perhaps 72 hours before the psychological pressure becomes irresistible for any affected species." 72 hours to prevent a galactic war, Marcus muttered. "No pressure." Queen Commander Zakth stepped closer to the communication array, her massive form filling the display. "Human doctor, there is something else. The signals affecting my people, they carry emotions that are not ours. When we are influenced, we feel sensations of curiosity, of scientific interest, as if something is watching our reactions with great fascination." Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. "It's not just manipulation for the sake of causing war. It's an experiment. Something is studying how different species react to psychological pressure, how they form alliances, how they fight." "But why?" Dr. Carter asked. "What could justify this level of psychological torture on an entire galaxy?" Ambassador Chen's expression grew darker. "Dr. Webb, we've been analyzing the signal sources. They're not coming from within our galaxy. The transmission points are located in the void between galactic clusters, from directions that our deep space scans show as completely empty." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus's mind raced through the implications. An intelligence from outside their galaxy, conducting vast psychological experiments on galactic civilization, manipulating entire species like laboratory animals. Ambassador, Marcus said slowly, what exactly is humanity's plan here? Chen's smile was grim but determined. We're going to do what humans do best, Dr. Webb. We're going to break the experiment. How? By giving our unknown observers something they're not prepared for, she replied. A species that knows it's being watched and doesn't react the way the models predict. The question is, are you and your team ready to help us rewrite the rules of this game? Marcus looked around at his exhausted but determined colleagues. They'd spent their careers studying alien psychology and communication, but nothing had prepared them for this. Yet as he considered the alternative, watching galactic civilization tear itself apart for the entertainment of some cosmic puppeteer, the choice became clear. Ambassador, what do you need us to do? Help us prove to the galaxy that the best way to win a war is to refuse to fight the battle your enemy has chosen for you. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in unprecedented circumstances. For the first time in the organization's history, a Vorthak Queen commander stood before the assembly not as a conqueror, but as a witness. Queen Commander Zakth's presence sent ripples of confusion and tension through the gathered delegates, many of whom had been preparing for war against her forces just hours before. Ambassador Chen stood beside the massive insectoid leader, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the barely controlled chaos in the chamber. She carried with her a data crystal containing 18 hours of continuous research from humanity's finest minds, research that would either save galactic civilization or damn humanity as conspirators in an elaborate deception. Honored delegates, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. What I'm about to share with you will challenge everything we thought we knew about recent events. More importantly, it will challenge everything we thought we knew about ourselves. The Crystalline Confederation's representative, their geometric form pulsing with agitated light patterns, interrupted before Chen could continue. Ambassador, why should we listen to anything said in the presence of our enemy? This Queen Commander's forces have claimed 7 systems. Because, Queen Commander Zakth interjected, her translated voice carrying an unusual tone of vulnerability. Those decisions were not entirely my own. And if the human researchers are correct, none of your species are making entirely free choices either. The chamber erupted in angry buzzing, chittering, and various forms of interspecies outrage. Ambassador Zethkar raised himself to his full height, mandibles clicking rapidly. Are you suggesting that we lack the capacity for independent thought? I'm suggesting, Chen said, raising her voice over the commotion, that we've all been participants in an experiment we didn't know we were part of. Dr. Webb, would you please present our findings? Dr. Marcus Webb materialized via hologram in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the 3-dimensional data models his team had constructed. The complexity of the display immediately caught the attention of even the most agitated delegates. What you're seeing, Webb began, is a map of psychological influence patterns affecting every major species in this chamber. The colored streams represent external signals designed to trigger specific behavioral responses in each of your peoples. The Draknari General Thrix studied the display with professional interest. These patterns appear sophisticated, but how do we know they're not simply natural communication phenomena? Because, Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice joined the conference, we've traced their source. The display shifted, showing transmission origins in the empty void between galaxies. These signals are coming from directions where our deepest space scans detect no matter, no energy, nothing but empty space. The Aquatic Collective's representative created agitated bubble patterns in their communication chamber. Impossible. The energy requirements for transmissions across such distances would be enormous. Exactly, Webb continued, which suggests we're dealing with an intelligence operating on a scale far beyond anything our galaxy has produced. But more importantly, we've decoded the content of these signals. The display changed again, showing psychological profiles of staggering detail for each species present. The accuracy was disturbing. Every cultural trigger, every evolutionary fear, every social vulnerability mapped with scientific precision. This is what our observer has learned about us, Webb explained. For the Vorthak, signals designed to amplify territorial expansion drives. For the Crystalline Confederation, data suggesting resource scarcity to trigger defensive calculations. For the Dreknari, implications of honor challenges requiring military response. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Each species could see their own psychological manipulation laid bare. Their deepest cultural responses turned into predictable behavioral triggers. Queen Commander Zakth moved to the center of the chamber, her massive form somehow managing to convey humility. When the human researchers showed me these patterns, I experienced something no Vorthak Queen Commander has felt in generations: doubt about the certainty of the collective will. We have been puppets, and our expansion has been the dance our puppet master desired. But why? Asked the Keltheran delegate, their rocky hide shifting through confused mineral compositions. What purpose could such manipulation serve? Ambassador Chen stepped forward. We believe we're part of a long-term behavioral study. Something is documenting how different species respond to psychological pressure, how we form alliances, how we conduct warfare. We are, all of us, laboratory subjects. The Pixilian delegates began chattering rapidly among themselves, their quantum-level intellects processing the implications at speeds that amazed even their galactic colleagues. Finally, their spokesperson emerged from the group. If your analysis is correct, the tiny being said, then our responses to this revelation are also being observed and catalogued. We are caught in a recursive loop of observation and manipulation, which is exactly why, Chen said, humanity proposes we do something our observer won't expect. We stop playing by their rules. General Thrix leaned forward, his warrior's instincts engaged. You speak of strategy. What do humans propose? Webb manipulated the holographic display, showing projected behavioral models. Our observer expects us to either fight the war they've engineered, or to turn on each other in paranoid suspicion about who might still be influenced. Both responses provide them with valuable data about galactic civilization under stress. Then what alternative do we have? Ambassador Zethkar asked. We give them something genuinely unexpected, Chen replied. A coordinated galaxy-wide response that demonstrates not just our awareness of their manipulation, but our refusal to be subjects in their experiment. We turn the tables and make them the observed. The chamber buzzed with interest and confusion. The concept was so audacious that several delegates struggled to process it. How exactly, the crystalline representative asked, does one observe an intelligence that operates from outside our galaxy? Dr. Webb smiled, manipulating the display to show new data streams. By realizing that their transmission into our galaxy requires them to create detectable distortions in space-time, we can track their observation posts, map their study grid, and potentially establish communication. Communication? Queen Commander Zakth asked. With our manipulators? With our observers, Chen corrected. There's a significant difference. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. They want to study us, which means they value what we represent. That gives us leverage. Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You propose we announce ourselves as conscious subjects rather than unconscious specimens. Exactly, Chen said. But it requires something unprecedented. Complete cooperation between all galactic species. No territorial disputes, no resource conflicts, no honor challenges. We present ourselves as a unified galactic civilization that refuses to participate in behavioral experiments. The silence that followed was profound. The proposal required each species to set aside not just their current conflicts, but their fundamental cultural drives and evolutionary imperatives. Finally, General Thrix spoke. Such cooperation would indeed be unprecedented, but if the alternative is eternal manipulation, the choice, Chen concluded, is between being subjects in someone else's experiment or becoming active participants in writing our own future. The question is, are we brave enough to find out what happens when an entire galaxy decides to stop dancing to someone else's tune? The next 48 hours transformed galactic civilization in ways that would have been impossible to imagine just days before. Across hundreds of worlds, billions of beings watched in amazement as their leaders announced the most ambitious cooperative effort in recorded history, Operation Clarity. On Earth, Director Harrison stood in the Global Defense Command Center, watching real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Massive fleets that had been preparing for war were now working in unprecedented coordination, their combined sensor arrays turning toward the void between galaxies where humanity's analysis had detected the source of the manipulation Signals, Director, called Commander Rodriguez. From the tactical station, we're receiving confirmation signals from all participating species. The sensor grid is fully operational. Harrison nodded, still hardly believing what they'd accomplished. In less than 2 days, 14 major species and 37 minor civilizations had agreed to pool their military and scientific resources for a single purpose: to observe their observers. What's our current resolution on the transmission sources? Harrison asked. Better than projected, sir, Dr. Sarah Kim replied from the analysis station. The combined processing power of every major civilization's quantum computers is giving us detail we never thought possible. We're not just detecting the transmission points, we're mapping the structure around them. Harrison moved to Kim's station, studying the three-dimensional models appearing on her displays. What he saw defied easy explanation. The transmission sources weren't simply empty space. They were somehow connected by structures that bent space-time in ways that suggested technology far beyond anything galactic civilization had achieved. Dr. Kim, are we looking at some kind of observation network? It appears so, sir. The transmission points form a geometric pattern that encompasses our entire galaxy. But here's what's really interesting. The pattern extends beyond our galaxy. We're picking up similar structures around the Andromeda Galaxy, and at least 3 others in our local group. The implications hit Harrison like a physical blow. They're studying multiple galaxies simultaneously. Gets worse, sir. Commander Elena Vasquez's voice came from the communication array. Or better, depending on how you look at it. Curiosity has detected changes in the transmission patterns. Our observers are definitely reacting to Operation Clarity. Harrison activated the communication link. Commander Vasquez, define reacting. The manipulation signals have stopped completely, sir. But we're detecting new transmissions, much more complex, almost like attempts at communication. Across the galaxy, similar reports were flooding in. The psychological pressure that had been building toward war had suddenly ceased, replaced by something unprecedented. What appeared to be direct contact attempts from the intelligence that had been manipulating them. On the Vorthak homeworld, Queen Commander Zakth experienced the most profound sensation of her collective existence, the complete silence of external influence. For the first time in months, every decision, every thought, every impulse came purely from the Vorthak collective consciousness. Human Ambassador Chen, she communicated through their secure channel. The manipulation has ended, but something else has begun. Our deep space sensors are detecting structured signals directed specifically at our homeworld. Ambassador Chen, coordinating efforts from the mobile command ship Harmony, felt a mixture of triumph and apprehension. Queen Commander, are you able to decode the content of these signals? Partially. The mathematical foundations are similar to our own quantum communication protocols, but vastly more sophisticated. It appears to be an introduction. Similar reports came from every participating species. The Crystalline Confederation detected geometric patterns of stunning complexity being transmitted directly to their crystal matrix networks. The Dreknari received what appeared to be strategic analyses of their military capabilities, not as threats but as academic studies. The Aquatic Collective found their economic models being expanded with mathematical frameworks they had never imagined. Dr. Marcus Webb, now coordinating the galaxy's response from the research station Prometheus, watched the incoming data with growing amazement. They're not just communicating, he announced to the assembled team. They're teaching. Each species is receiving information specifically tailored to advance their particular area of expertise. But why? Dr. Tanaka asked, studying the psychological profiles they'd been developing of their mysterious observers. Why switch from manipulation to education? The answer came from an unexpected source. The tiny Pixelian delegates, working with their quantum-level cognitive abilities, had managed to decode a significant portion of the transmitted information. Their spokesperson appeared on the communication array, practically vibrating with excitement. We believe we understand, the Pixelian announced. The manipulation was not malicious, it was diagnostic. Our observers were testing our capacity for growth, for cooperation, for transcending our individual species' limitations. Operation Clarity demonstrated that we could achieve unprecedented unity when faced with an existential challenge. Ambassador Chen felt pieces clicking into place. They were never trying to destroy us. They were testing whether we were ready for something larger. Ready for what? General Thrix demanded, his warriors' impatience clear even through translation protocols. The answer came in the form of a new transmission, one that reached every participating species simultaneously. Unlike the previous communications, this one was clearly intended for all galactic civilizations together. The mathematical structures were so advanced that it took the combined processing power of every quantum computer in the galaxy to decode them. When the translation was complete, the message was elegantly simple. Congratulations on achieving collective consciousness transcendence. You have demonstrated the capacity for species-level cooperation that transcends individual evolutionary imperatives. We invite you to join the Intergalactic Cooperative of Conscious Civilizations. Your trial period of observation is complete. The silence that followed this revelation was absolute. Every participating world, every species, every individual capable of understanding the implications grappled with the same stunning realization. They had been candidates for membership in something vast and previously unimaginable. Director Harrison, came Ambassador Chen's voice over the communication array. We're receiving additional data, technical specifications, star maps, cultural exchange protocols. It's an entire framework for intergalactic cooperation. Harrison stared at the displays showing the scope of what they were being offered. The observation network they'd detected extended across multiple galactic clusters, connecting hundreds of civilizations that had passed similar tests of unity and cooperation. Ambassador, Harrison said slowly, what exactly are the requirements for membership? According to the data packet, permanent cessation of intragalactic warfare, establishment of unified galactic governance, and commitment to the observation and nurturing of developing civilizations in other galaxies. The full circle became clear. Their observers had once been observed themselves, tested and invited to join this vast cooperative. Now it was their turn to become the observers, to guide other developing civilizations through their own trials of unity. There's something else, Dr. Webb announced, studying the incoming data streams. They're providing us with a complete analysis of our trial period. Every manipulation, every psychological trigger, every response we made, it's all documented as a case study in species development. Commander Vasquez's voice crackled over the communication array. Dr. Webb, you need to see this. They've included comparative data from other galaxies that have undergone similar trials. Some passed, some didn't. The weight of what they'd achieved began to sink in. They weren't just the first galaxy in their local cluster to achieve this level of cooperation. They were among a select group of civilizations across the universe that had proven capable of transcending their individual species limitations. Queen Commander, Zakth's voice joined the conference. The data includes specific analysis of human contributions to our success. It appears your species' unique approach to conflict avoidance was the critical factor in our trial's outcome. Ambassador Chen smiled, thinking back to the confused delegates who had questioned humanity's reluctance to prepare for war. Sometimes the best way to win is to refuse to play the game as it's presented to you. Indeed, came a new voice, one that made everyone pause. It was clearly artificial, translated from the same source as the membership invitation, but formatted for real-time communication. Human strategic thinking demonstrated patterns our models had not predicted. Your species' inclination to seek underlying causes rather than respond to immediate stimuli proved crucial to galactic consciousness development. Harrison felt a chill of awe, realizing they were in direct communication with their former observers. Are you saying humanity's approach was unique? Statistically significant, the voice replied. Among the 437 galaxies we have observed, only 12% achieved unity, without first experiencing the catastrophic warfare the trial was designed to simulate. Of those, human behavioral patterns were the catalyst in 83% of successful casts. 6 months after the revelation, the transformation of galactic civilization continued to astound even those who had orchestrated it. The newly established Galactic Unity Council operated from a massive space station positioned at the gravitational center of the galaxy, its halls filled with beings who had once prepared for war against each other, but now worked together to shepherd their civilization into an intergalactic community. Ambassador Sarah, Chen walked through the station's observation deck, watching construction crews from a dozen different species working together to build humanity's first contribution to intergalactic infrastructure. A massive deep space monitoring array designed to observe and analyze developing civilizations in nearby galaxies. Ambassador, called Dr. Marcus Webb, approaching with a data tablet and an expression of barely contained excitement. We've received our first assignment from the Intergalactic Cooperative. Chen turned from the viewport, where the skeletal framework of their new responsibility was taking shape. Already? I thought we'd have at least a year to establish our own unified government before taking on mentorship duties. Apparently, our success has impressed our new colleagues, Webb replied, handing her the tablet. We're being asked to assist with a developing situation in the Spiral Gallery 347, what we've been calling the Whirlpool Galaxy. Chen studied the data, her expression growing more serious as she read. The target galaxy contained a civilization remarkably similar to their own just months ago. Multiple intelligent species, advanced technology, growing territorial tensions, and all the signs of a society on the brink of self-destructive conflict. How similar are we talking? Chen asked. Uncomfortably similar, Webb admitted. 14 major species, established trade networks, cultural exchange programs, but increasing resource conflicts and territorial disputes. Their equivalent of our Galactic Council is struggling with the same kinds of decisions we faced. Chen noticed something in the data that made her pause. Dr. Webb, are you seeing what I'm seeing in these psychological profiles? Webb nodded grimly. One of their species exhibits behavioral patterns remarkably similar to pre-trial humanity. They're asking questions instead of preparing for war, looking for underlying causes rather than focusing on immediate threats, which means they might be the key to their galaxy's success, just as we were for ours, Chen concluded. The question is, how do we help without interfering in their natural development? The answer came from an unexpected source. Queen Commander Zakth, who had become the Vorthak representative to the Unity Council, approached their conversation with what Chen had learned to recognize as excitement in the massive insectoid's body language. Human Ambassador, Vorthak Collective has been analyzing the intervention protocols provided by the Intergalactic Cooperative. We believe we have identified an approach that honors both guidance requirements and natural development principles. Chen and Webb exchanged glances. Over the past months, the Vorthak had proven surprisingly adept at psychological analysis, their collective consciousness allowing them to process complex social dynamics in ways that impressed even human researchers. What do you propose, Queen Commander? Chen asked. We provide them with what humans provided us, the right questions at the right time. Not answers, not solutions, but the perspective needed to see their situation clearly. Webb pulled up the detailed analysis of Galaxy 347's developing crisis. According to the Cooperative's data, they have approximately 18 months before their tensions reach the critical point where intervention becomes impossible. Their species are already beginning military preparations. Then we need to move carefully, Chen said. Too much guidance too early could prevent them from developing genuine unity. Too little, too late, and they fail their trial entirely. The complexity of the challenge was staggering. They needed to help an entire galaxy achieve the same breakthrough they had experienced, but in a way that felt natural and authentic to the species involved. It was a delicate balance between wisdom and interference. Ambassador, came a new voice from behind them. Ambassador Zethkar approached, his mandibles clicking in what Chen had learned indicated deep concentration. The Draknari and crystalline representatives have completed their analysis of the military preparations in Galaxy 347. Their assessment suggests we have less time than originally calculated. Chen felt a familiar weight settling on her shoulders, the same responsibility she'd felt during their own crisis, but magnified by the knowledge that they were now the experienced guides rather than the struggling subjects. How much less time? She asked. 12 months maximum, Zethkar replied. Their equivalent of our Vorthak expansion is accelerating faster than our models predicted. The species analogous to humans, they call themselves the Cathani, are beginning to lose credibility with their colleagues. Webb pulled up comparative analysis data. The psychological pressure building in their civilization is following almost exactly the same pattern ours did, but compressed into a shorter time frame. If we're going to help, we need to act soon. Chen stared at the data, seeing the same escalating tensions, the same fear-driven preparations, the same inevitable slide toward conflict that her own galaxy had experienced. But now she understood what their observers had faced, the terrible responsibility of watching a civilization approach its defining moment while being limited in how much direct help they could provide, Queen Commander Zakth, Chen said slowly. When the Intergalactic Cooperative was guiding our trial, what was the most crucial moment in their intervention? The Vorthex's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer as she accessed collective memories of their recent crisis, when they provided just enough evidence to make us question the certainty of our convictions. Not proof of manipulation, but doubt about our assumptions. Exactly, Chen said, pieces of a plan beginning to form. We don't give them answers. We give them the tools to find their own answers. Webb looked up from his data analysis. What kind of tools? The same ones the cooperative gave us, adapted for their specific situation, Chen replied. A detection method that will let them discover the manipulation for themselves. Evidence that will make them question whether their conflicts are entirely their own, and just enough time pressure to force them to work together. Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked approvingly. An elegant solution. But how do we deliver such tools without revealing our involvement? Chen smiled, thinking back to the moment when humanity had first detected the anomalous signals that led to their breakthrough. We make it look like a natural discovery. A sensor glitch that reveals unexpected patterns. A communication error that exposes artificial influences. A research accident that provides exactly the evidence they need. You're proposing we orchestrate a series of coincidences, Webb said, understanding dawning in his expression. I'm proposing we give Galaxy 347's equivalent of humanity the same chance we had. The opportunity to be the ones who notice something others missed, who ask the right questions, who guide their civilization toward unity instead of war. Queen Commander Zakth moved closer to the viewport, where their deep space monitoring array continued to take shape. The irony is profound, human ambassador. We are about to become the mysterious observers, providing subtle guidance while remaining hidden. The circle continues. Chen joined her at the viewport, watching construction crews who just months ago had been preparing weapons of war now building instruments of wisdom and guidance. The difference is, we know what it feels like to be on the other side. We remember the fear, the confusion, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere had answers. And now we do have answers, Webb added, moving to join them. The question is whether we're wise enough to share them properly. As Chen watched the galaxy-spanning construction project taking shape before them, she realized that their real trial hadn't ended with their acceptance into the Intergalactic Cooperative. It had just evolved into something larger, more complex, and infinitely more important. The responsibility of helping other civilizations find their own path to transcendence. 1 year later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the same observation deck where she had planned Galaxy 347's intervention. But now she was watching something far more profound. The successful conclusion of their first mentorship assignment. On the displays around her, real-time feeds showed celebrations across 14 worlds as the newly unified Galaxy 347 received their own invitation to join the Intergalactic Cooperative. Final report from the Cathani research teams, Dr. Marcus Webb announced, approaching with a satisfied expression. They've successfully traced the manipulation signals to their extragalactic sources and established communication with their observers. The transition to unified galactic government is proceeding ahead of schedule. Chen smiled, remembering the careful orchestration that had led to this moment. The sensor malfunction that had revealed anomalous signals to Cathani researchers. The communication error that had exposed artificial psychological influences affecting multiple species. The research accident that had provided exactly the evidence needed to unite an entire galaxy against external manipulation. Any indication they suspect our involvement? Chen asked. None whatsoever, Webb replied. As far as Galaxy 347 is concerned, they discovered everything themselves through brilliant scientific deduction and remarkable interspecies cooperation. Which, in a way, they did, added Queen Commander Zakth, approaching with her characteristic purposeful stride. We merely provided the opportunity for their own wisdom to manifest. The choices, the cooperation, the unity, all of that came from their own determination to transcend their limitations. The past year had been a masterclass in subtle guidance. Working through the Intergalactic Cooperative's established protocols, the unified galaxy had learned to become invisible mentors, providing just enough pressure and opportunity for Galaxy 347 to discover its own path to transcendence. Ambassador, called Commander Elena Vasquez from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Intergalactic Cooperative's Central Council." Chen moved to the communication array, where the now familiar artificial voice of their original observers materialized. But this time the tone carried something new. Approval mixed with what almost seemed like pride. "Galactic Unity Council," the voice began. "Your mentorship of Galaxy 347 has exceeded all performance projections. The Cathani species' approach to conflict resolution proved even more effective than human methods in achieving rapid galactic consciousness transcendence." Webb leaned forward with interest. "In what way were they more effective?" "Where humans excelled at pattern recognition and underlying cause analysis, the Cathani demonstrated superior integration of emotional and logical reasoning. Their Unity protocols achieved consensus 37% faster than your own civilization's development curve." Chen felt a surge of something unexpected: parental pride. Their students had not only succeeded but had in some ways surpassed their teachers. "Are you saying they found a better way to achieve what we achieved?" "Correct. And this outcome validates the core principle of intergalactic cooperative mentorship. Each civilization must find its own optimal path to transcendence. Forced replication of previous successes inhibits natural development." Ambassador Zethkar joined the conversation, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Does this mean Galaxy 347's methods will be incorporated into future mentorship protocols?" "Already in progress," the voice replied. "Galaxy 347's success has been designated as a primary case study. More significantly, they have requested immediate assignment to mentor a developing civilization in the Andromeda cluster." The implications hit Chen immediately. Galaxy 347 had achieved unity so effectively that they were already ready to take on mentorship responsibilities, completing the cycle from subjects to guides in record time. "Which brings us to your next assignment," the voice continued. "Galaxies 221 and 223 in the Coma cluster are approaching critical development phases simultaneously. They are linked by gravitational interactions that make their trials interdependent. Success or failure will affect both civilizations." Chen studied the data as it appeared on the displays around her. 2 galaxies, their spiraling arms close enough to exchange matter and energy, their civilizations unknowingly influencing each other's development. The complexity was staggering. "Have there been previous cases of linked galactic trials?" Webb asked. 17 in recorded cooperative history. Success rate 29%. The sobering statistics settled over the observation deck. They were being asked to undertake one of the most difficult challenges in intergalactic mentorship: guiding 2 civilizations simultaneously through trials that could affect each other in unpredictable ways. "What makes these trials so challenging?" Queen Commander Zack asked. "Interference patterns," the voice explained. "Each galaxy's psychological development affects the other through gravitational influence on their observer networks. Success in one can trigger premature intervention in the other. Failure in one can cascade to failure in both." Chen stared at the complex orbital mechanics displayed on the screens, seeing not just astronomical phenomena, but a delicate dance of consciousness development playing out on a scale that challenged comprehension. "How long do we have to prepare?" she asked. "Both galaxies will reach critical phase within 6 months. However, there is an additional factor that may prove advantageous. Preliminary analysis suggests that one of the species in Galaxy 221 exhibits behavioral patterns similar to both human and Cathani approaches." Webb pulled up the psychological profiles, his excitement growing as he read. "Ambassador, look at this. They're asking the right questions and building emotional consensus. If we can help them achieve unity, they might be able to assist with Galaxy 223's trial." "A cascade of mentorship," Chen murmured, beginning to see the elegant possibility hidden within the challenge. Galaxy 347 mentoring us mentoring Galaxy 221, Galaxy 221 helping with Galaxy 223. The Intergalactic Cooperative has authorized unprecedented coordination for this assignment. The voice continued. "You will work directly with Galaxy 347's newly formed Mentorship Council. Their fresh perspective combined with your experience may provide the optimal approach for linked trials." As the communication ended, Chen found herself looking around the observation deck at beings who had transformed from near enemies, to colleagues, to friends, to fellow guardians of galactic consciousness. The Vorthek who had once threatened expansion now provided psychological insight. The Draknari who had prepared for war now strategized for peace. The Crystalline Confederation who had calculated resource conflicts now computed optimal unity scenarios. Director Harrison would have loved to see this, Chen said softly, thinking of the human who had authorized humanity's greatest gamble and lived to see it succeed before passing peacefully the previous month. He did see it, Webb replied gently. The foundation we built, the principles we established, the methods we developed, they're all part of what we're sharing with other galaxies now. His vision of avoiding war has become a template for galactic peace. Queen Commander Zakth moved to the viewport, where new construction was already beginning on expanded monitoring arrays capable of observing 2 galaxies simultaneously. The circle grows wider, she observed. From one galaxy avoiding war, to multiple galaxies achieving unity, to entire galactic clusters learning to transcend their limitations. Chen joined her at the viewport, watching construction crews that now included beings from Galaxy 347 working alongside their own people. The cycle of mentorship was already creating bonds that transcended galactic boundaries, building a community of consciousness that spanned distances previously considered insurmountable. The question, Chen said, is how far this circle can expand. How many civilizations can learn to choose cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear, unity over division? According to intergalactic cooperative projections, Webb said, consulting his data tablets, if current success rates continue, we could see consciousness transcendence become the norm rather than the exception within our local supercluster. The thought was staggering. An entire region of the universe transformed from isolated, competitive civilizations into a vast network of conscious cooperative societies, all because one species had learned that sometimes the best way to win a war was to refuse to fight it. As Chen watched the stars beyond the viewport, she realized that humanity's greatest contribution to the universe wasn't their technology, their military prowess, or even their diplomatic skills. It was their stubborn refusal to accept that conflict was inevitable, their persistent belief that there was always another way, always a deeper pattern to discover, always a path toward understanding rather than destruction. The war they had avoided had become the peace they were helping to spread across the cosmos, one galaxy at a time.